I mean, it's I think about it sometime. It's luxurious in my eyes to to be able to live in one country, and you have the social capital. It's something that I'll never know again. Because I left when I was 20, and and then you sort of have to build a new network, and it takes time. It takes time to just feel like, this is home. It takes, yeah. Every time I get on the street, I'm just amazed how beautiful Denmark is. Still, after living for so long. By now it should just be like normal. But every time I get out, I go, wow, how did they build this country? How many years it took them? And also I like this project because it's just 3 actors, really.
And you're one of the 3, so you only have 2 more actors to sort of deal with.
Yeah.
And in the last production you were 7 on this?
Yeah, 7 on the stage. Yeah. We've sort of been reducing. The first one it was March into Venice, right? 2021, the whole team.
Yeah.
21.
It's a big team.
It was stupid. Not stupid, but it was...
That was back in 2016?
Yeah. Yeah, 2016.
Based on Shakespeare's play, and then you changed the title to The Merchants of Copenhagen instead of Venice.
We changed the title, but we did some editing as well. Creative editing to sort of try and fit the gambit. Kind of fast forward it a little bit. It was fun, it was big, and then we scaled down again to Enemy of the People, which is still a big cast. And that was insane when I think of it, because it was actors from Denmark, Norway and Sweden. From 3 countries, right? And different backgrounds. And you think, oh wow, this is going to be lovely. And it is lovely. All this people together, wow, it's perfect, diversity, yay.
But you were on the stage as well, weren't you?
No, that one I wasn't. I relinquished my role. I wanted to play Dr. Stockman. But my director was like, oh, you know what, I've seen one girl and I think it would be so much fun to have a girl play Dr. Stockman. I go, let's give it a try.
So you were overruled.
Yeah, I was overruled in that one. And I was okay with that. Then you stay on the producing aspect of it, which also takes too much of energy and time anyway.
And then the next one, it was Enemy of the People?
That was in 2017. After that, it was 4 Colored Girls. Yeah, it was fun because we played in 3 countries. Still, it's not easy to work with. I'll be careful how I put this. It's always a challenge. It's always a challenge.
Looking forward to hear how you will put it. Because I have a vague idea of what you were about to say.
Yeah, it's always a challenge to work with people from different backgrounds, regardless.
Oh, I thought you would say with 7 girls on stage.
No way. It's also very delicate and interesting because it is for colored girls. It is a play about women. And as a producer, I'm not a woman. And therefore, I have to sort of also give up and try and understand. There's no other way of putting it. And even though you'll never fully comprehend, to realize you're not in charge of this, to sort of give it up, let it just go.
It was very touching seeing the result. And I saw it in Cuba last year, in the autumn, and did a review for it. I was very surprised, so to speak. Somehow, it's a difficult text, because where is the focus? You have 7 characters, each one of the colors of the rainbow, and the stories mingle. It's like a stafette, passing one on to one another, and you follow the story from one person to the other. And of course, some of the stories are more touching than others, and it was as if it started as a Polterabend party-like feeling, and then somewhere in the middle it slowed down, and then in the end it became very, very touching and very hard to watch as well. It was great. Just before the performance, 2 of your players, Rebecca Langley and Victoria Seest, did a short extract on the festival, and maybe we should listen to that one.
Somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff. Somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff. Somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff. Not my poems or my dances I gave up on the streets, but somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff. Like a kleptomaniac, working hard, forgetting while stealing. This is mine. This ain't your stuff. Now, why don't you put me back and let me hang out in my own self? Somebody almost walked off with all my stuff and didn't care enough to leave a home note saying I was too late for my own solo conversation or too sizes too small for my own tacky skirt. What can anybody do with something of no value on an open market?
Did you get a dime for my things?
Hey man, where are you going with all my stuff? This is a woman's trip, and I need my stuff to ooh and ah about. Daddy, I got a mainline number for my own shit.
This is mine. Wanjiko's own things. That's my name. Now give me back my stuff.
And it's interesting with this text because somehow it's a text about taking things, one person stealing from another. Very simple. But on the other hand, it suddenly the person says that I was in the plastic bag, which was taken. It becomes a picture of the whole performance.
I mean, I was very happy about the production. For many, it was pioneering.
It was produced in '75 and put on Broadway and made into a film in 2010. It reached Copenhagen in 2018, which was quite late. That's part of your whole project. You want to juxtapose text from one country or from one part of the world to another part and give opportunities for color players in Denmark to act together. You want to put some kind of... what do we actually want to do?
Just theatre, and have to come up with very interesting...
but you have a very colourful cast, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we did with that one. And I remember, a very first conversation we had in Bagarop. He asked me this question, and I've not forgotten it since. He asked me, what do you mean by new Nordic voices? What's new? That's exactly what's new about it? And I was just trying to sort of say, this juxtaposing thing, that it's a 3-year project, and the first plays that we used was for colored girls, and we had a workshop about it where we were juxtaposing it with Mina Kant, and having 2 different theatre directors talking about the different contexts, and so on and so forth, and then the actual play, that happened. Of course, you're using artists of different background, introducing material and text and other pieces that have not been performed here, and they're classics by their own rights from whichever part of the world they're from. So that is the one aspect, right? Bringing in theatre classics from, they say, global south. I'm not sure what they mean by that, but from
it sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds really good. Non-Western, pretty much, in terms of both historically, maybe geographically also. So, for instance, for Colored Girls, that is a Western play in many ways because it's African American. Yeah, it is that, but then again, it's not by choice. They didn't end up there by choice, so we claim them. And that one was really good because actually what happened, it was in 2019, but in 2018 the playwright actually died. The lady, and then I believe 2019 Broadway put it up. I got the rights from them before they put it up, and I later found out that the person who gave me the rights was one of those involved in putting it in Broadway. Like, are you kidding me? So it was just perfect timing for that. So that is one aspect of it. And then new Nordic voices. The other aspect of it is to sort of analyze Nordic classics through our own understanding, through our own perspectives. That's what brings us forward to with Frøken Julie. It's a bit delicate because it's premiered in Denmark, right?
Back in...
Yeah.
he wrote it in 1888.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful that a play from that time still is somehow difficult to handle.
Yeah.
Because it's about all the things which we care about, so to speak. It's about power, it's about gender, it's about sex. It doesn't seem a bit old at all.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the reason why it's still being performed so much.
Yeah.
Of course, it's easy to handle because it's 2 main characters and then a 3rd one. No. And I think you said something about that you added 1 person.
Oh yeah, since then I have developed a few more things.
Okay. You only kept the title.
Yeah, since then, I think that was a couple of months ago, was it? Yeah. So it was still fresh and I just knew I had to set it up in this colonial context.
Maybe you should say something about the colonial context because it's new. Of course, you have special treat by moving it to your own past, so to speak.
No, this is 1920s.
1920, yeah, but still.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in the 80s, so so close enough, right?
Almost, yeah.
Title is Happy Valley's Flapper. That's my adaptation. Sometimes adapting a place is as difficult as just writing a new one. So what happened in about 1885, after the Berlin Conference and and the scramble and partition of Africa, was that when they first came, they said, okay, you know what, we have to build a railway line from Mombasa into the interior. It's called Lunatic Express. And they built that one. I think it took them about 4 years until 1902. And then, this is the Brits, right? And then they realized, okay, you know what, we need to get money out of this thing. So what should we do? So they started advertising in the most Western countries, even as far as Australia, that they need farmers to come and settle and use the land, and then they could always, because this was virgin land, so to speak, then they could transport the goods to Europe. And it was called the Lunatic Express because it was being debated, I think, in England, like, oh, what's its purpose? Nobody knows. Where is it going? Nobody knows. They couldn't justify it, why they're doing it. But if you start going into more history about it, you realize that the Germans also were building, a train, I believe it was in Tanzania, I think, and there was this sort of competition. So the whole idea was to take goods and transport them, rather to trade them to the Western world. Now, remember, nobody had tasted a banana in Europe until 1880s, because you don't grow bananas here, right? And so this was part of the whole thing, and it was bringing in exotic fruits, vegetables. I think you have something called Colonial Context. I don't know if it's connected to that at all. What happened was now a stream of settlers started coming in, and within these settlers from Europe, you had three categories. You had the aristocrats. And in the aristocrats, they had money, they were coming for adventure, they were bored, they were like, let's just go and have a good time.
They're going for the party.
They were going for the party, and and they were very wealthy. And then you had the South Africans. The South Africans, the Boers, they were coming in as as workers pretty much, because they had the skills, and this was after the Boer War. They were still migrating up to the Eastern Africa part. And then you had the madmen. And this
the
was
madmen.
Yeah.
The workers.
Not the workers. These are just
the one who jumped on the adventure trip.
Exactly, and some of them they were exiled.
Convicts,
exactly. And this is at the same time, in Europe you still have this the class thing, which is just collapsing. Incidentally, this is during the Sternberg thing. For some reason, this guys introduced this class thing back to where they were in the colonies. So what happened was, now in 1920s, they took up this land in Kenya.
And you're from Kenya yourself?
Yes, exactly. Because it is a very beautiful area. Waterfalls and different kinds of flora and fauna, and birds chirping and crickets. It's very serene.
Paradise-like.
It's paradise-like, yeah. It is paradise. It's called the Wanjohi Valley, and with hills, and So I think one of the first settlers was a guy called Erogan, building this amazing, replicating sort of the high life of Europe, and they'll import everything, the materials, they'll build these big mansions, and they're still there until today. And there are many of them, and within this stream of settlers, you had now very interesting characters who are now called the Happy Valley set. And it comprised of so many of them, but the most interesting one is Jocelyn Hay Victor, Lord Errol. And he's coming from a very, very aristocratic background. I think he was even present during the coronation of King George. His family goes way back into the misty Scottish period, I don't know how many hundreds of years ago. They went to all this Eton, and it was this class of people. He also came with his wife, who is a bit 8 years older than him, Idina Sackville, and who was also coming from a very, very aristocratic, posh, long history. So, and with his wife, and they're really the founders of this whole. So there was Lord Errol, there was Idina Sackville, there was Kiki Preston, and she was an American lady, and there was Alice de Janze, and many others. But my focus is now on this core four. And what was it? This is a place of debauchery. It was a place of good times. This is the 1920s, the flappers' age from America, and and it's catching all, and this whole women liberation.
I guess we have a pretty clear picture of it if we think about the dance situation of that time.
Yes.
I guess that was quite other feeling, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And so what Idina Sackville actually did, in her house, it was called the Clouds, and Clouds was about, I think it was 8,000 feet above sea level. You can try and imagine that, It's called Clouds for that reason. If you wake up in the morning, it's just the clouds. It's like, wow. I want to live there. And what she used to do was that I think...
Is that these places, are the places that in your childhood you've been jumping up and down?
No. I wish I did. Actually, right now I want to go there and see it myself. But they're a bit outskirts. Because these guys, they lived on the outskirts, mostly in the...
And you're from Nairobi yourself?
Yeah, I'm from Nairobi, yeah. And it's a little bit outskirts, about 2 hours away, really. It's not that far. But it's the places, I would go for school trips towards the Rift Valley. And have you been to Kenya?
No.
Oh, we should really sort this out. It's a place where Karen Blixen should have had her land, because she took her land in a very place where I could not grow anything. I have no idea.
By accident, or?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how it happened. I think it was...
Bad advice?
Bad advice. I think it was Bro Blixen. Surely it must have been him. But all these were friends. He was friends with Lord Errol, who is really the founder of the Happy Valley. It's called Happy Valley for many reasons, but it is mostly known for the sex, because she used to have all these sex parties and and so on and so forth. But why did it become public? It became quite public because in 1941 the founder of Happy Valley, Lord Errol, and there's a lot of different books written about this story, Oh yeah, I gave you for Idina Sackville.
Yeah.
In the beginning I wanted the play to portray her, but I changed along the way. Yeah.
You were thinking her of the part of Fröken.
Yeah, I was thinking it because her life is as tragic as it is. You want to make a play about Miss Julie and put it in that whole setting of Happy Valley, and then you have to ask yourself, okay, so which of these characters does it really fit? Then you sort of have to study their different histories. So which one could it be like of the perfect fit for this? So in the beginning it was Idina Sackville. Oh my God, this is just perfect, And then I came across another one. I said, oh God, this is just, So that was sort of the process of it. But as I was saying, so what happened? This is important because in 1941, when Lord Errol was killed, he was assassinated, and there's so many different conspiracies of who assassinated him. Some say it was the Germans, some say it was the M16.
So we don't really know.
Yeah, my play is going to solve this thing once and for all. We're going to solve this thing once and for all. That's the whole thing. That is the whole thing. Yeah. So that's what I've been up to. I've been researching and I've been putting on my detective eyes.
But maybe you should tell something about what is the play actually about, because it's a difficult play, because it's on one hand it's very simple, on the other hand it's very complicated. What will it be about in your version?
Privately, everything, but I'm just curious, how much do I give without, because I want people to come and see it. This is going to change their lives.
Well, well, something about what I think I've seen 2 or 3 performances about Fröken Julie, and what always puzzled me is that it's like a cat and mouse play, because you don't really know who is chasing who, and it's something about with the sex play in it. Is it her having the upper hand, or is it him? And it sort of changes all the time, and when you see it you are questioning what is actually going on. Who is having the pants on and who is the one being eaten, so to speak. And since you'll be playing Shang in the play, I'm sure you have some point of view about it.
What I've done with it, the very first thing I had to do was to sort of reimagine their backstories and reimagine it within the Happy Valley setting. That's what I did. So for instance, I'm using Miss Julie as a portrait of Alice de Jarze. So that is sort of the entry point. So now, what happens is that what I've done with the play is that I've divided it into 2 acts. So let's look at the original. The original is that in Act 2, the morning I should say, right? You have Miss Julie. This is when she realizes she's fallen.
It's a play about upstairs, downstairs.
Yes.
And fallen means that she's not the aristocrat that she used to be, or she claimed to be.
She's getting into this whole sorrowful, depressed. So what I've done is to make it sort of fit into this. I think I told you last time, and you say, "Oh yeah, good luck with that." And this was very difficult because the thing is, Happy Valley had 2 eras. There was heydays, which was in the 1920s. Everything was perfect. This is when they were, oh my God, how do you put it? This was
high tide.
The high tide. This was the Act 1 of Miss Julie. She has the upper hand, if you can put it that way. And then it lasted until 1921, with the Wall Street crash and and so forth. And then in the 1940s is when it sort of went down. It started off by their founder being assassinated, and then Alice de Janze committing suicide, and Idina Sackville ends up with cancer, Broughton, who also committed suicide, Kiki Preston died of drugs.
So wasn't there anything left?
Well, the buildings.
Yeah.
After that there wasn't much left. There's a residue, of course, some of their grandchildren and so forth. But it was the end of an era. So what I've done with this play is that I've set Act 1 in 1929, and then Act 2 I've placed it in 1941.
So it's party in Act 1 and depression in Part 2?
Yes, more or less.
Right, it'll be exciting. And we're having this conversation a couple of months before the festival, and your play, if it is still according to your plan, will be possible to realize that. It will be just after the festival.
I got a venue at Folketera. But before we need to come back to the backstories again, because what I'm doing is I'm having a seminar and a workshop, mini conference, however you want to call it.
As you actually do each time you do a project, because the workshop is more or less half of it, isn't it? Because that's the place where you juxtapose those different kinds of themes, different kinds of times, and put people together and make them work it out. Yes,
indeed. And what we're doing with this particular, I'm calling it BBC, which stands for Besides Blixen's Colonials. Yeah. and I'm doing that because it's wonderful with Karen Blixen's story, and I love Karen Blixen, and so forth. Blixen, they're at the same time, because Blixen arrives in Kenya in 1914, I believe.
Oh.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on there.
Aha, exactly. And you know what? I have a theory, and they will not agree with me. I better be careful, because Blixen and Lord Errol, they knew each other, and actually it's a very interesting story of what happened. There were some Americans who had come and they ended up in Karen Blixen's house, right? And this was after Alice de Janze had tried to shoot her lover, in Paris. And these women, and they started talking to Karen Blixen, talking about all the dreadful people in the colony. And Karen Blixen led them on, like, oh, really? Okay, who do you know? And they started talking about Alice de Janze. And Karen Blixen was leading them, knowing very well that Alice de Janze and Lord Errol are on their way to their house. They arrive at her house. She ends up, and that's when she reveals to them, here she is, and she's just having fun with it, But they knew of each other. You see, Happy Valley is a place of syphilis. I'm really not sure if Bob Blixen ended up there, and those are theories. Those are theories. There is no record of whether Karen Blixen was ever at Happy Valley, but all these people, they knew each other. But so my point is this. Besides Blixen's Colonials, as a seminar and a conference workshop, however we put it, is trying to introduce other aspects of colonial history from this period that are less known, at least to my knowledge, which is very limited in this part of the world, right? So very few people have heard of Happy Valley, and scholars. I'm not sure. Had you heard of Happy Valley yourself before? Yeah.
Never before.
Yeah.
You were the one who introduced it to me by giving me the book.
And there's a lot of interesting literature around that whole.
But I guess the reason why we don't know it is that if we have to deal with it, we have to deal with some kind of shame as well.
Yeah.
And we avoid that.
Okay.
Don't you think that's part of it?
I never thought of it actually.
But it's quite obvious, isn't it?
And the
because somehow we are so happy with all the big houses in Copenhagen, but very seldom we talk about our colonial past. Yeah. It's sort of, the word seems strange in a way to us. It's only recently that we've been forced to have a meeting with that time. I guess it's out of shame. Yeah. Maybe we don't know it's shame, but we just know it's something which is difficult to deal with, and then we pretend that it's not really part of our history.
But it's complex, and I find myself asking, it's very difficult to divide human character into bad and good. It is very difficult, and even if you look at some of
be specific.
Yeah, be specific. Yeah. Okay. Let me try and break it down the way I understand it. And in the same respect, when you look at these historic periods, colonial history, and so on and so forth. Yes, you have systems which are racist. You have systems which are degrading. You have systems which subjugate. You have systems that take advantage of human beings. You have that. However, within the same systems, those who find themselves, can we claim all of them to be bad and good? I'm struggling with it.
It's simplifying it, breaking it down into some sizes which are easy to handle, I guess. But it might not be very true. But still, it's a very interesting situation that you, coming from Kenya, doing this play. Well, it's just a theatre production, but still dealing with this conflict about Kenya and Denmark. Suddenly, you bring it to stage. It must be thought-provoking for you, isn't it?
It is thought-provoking. It is in many levels. Am I sanitizing colonial history by portraying human characters? Because there's a rage out there. The questions I keep asking myself, do I want to be part of the rage and, take... what we've done for colored girls, for goodness sake. If it's about trying to really get a point out there, I think that should have done it. But for me, this particular one, I'm just trying to observe these human characters. Alice Jones, for me, is very interesting. She's a person who suffers from bipolar. Now, I am diagnosed with that. It's something that I struggle with. I'm becoming more open about it. And I'm trying to just understand, what is this person going through, despite their luxurious life, they're showing off. Surely they must have some human character, and that is what I'm locking myself into. And my fear, quote unquote, is that I can be judged by both sides and say, oh, you're sanitizing colonial history.
And what do you mean by that?
By sanitizing colonial history is that I'm not... The most obvious path would be to portray these people as superior, carrying out the superiority complex against Jean. They're subjugating him, and that is so simple to do. That is, for me, it's
But it's fun because that's the way it's often been played. Yeah. But the very fact that you're black yourself, it puts the issue on stage without even saying anything.
Exactly. I mean, you don't have to struggle to say it to get that across. You don't have to struggle. I mean, that one it's there by default. So for me to try and find the stories. The interesting stories. Who killed Lord Errol? Really? I mean, there's so many different books. There's a lady called Errol Tibrisky who wrote a very interesting book, The Life of Lord Errol, and she goes on about how he was killed by the M16, and this was because of Churchill. Churchill was trying to make a deal during the World War II, sorry. Trying to make a deal with Germany, and Lord Errol knew about all of this, because he was trying to balance, should we go to war, should we not go to war, and Lord Errol knew about it because of his fascist background, and so these are some of the interesting things that...
But Michael, honestly, you're putting on a play where it's such a sex game between domination and sub-domination.
Yeah.
Do you really believe that the audience will be bothered about who killed him? Because the play between the two main characters are so much... It's about everyday story.
And you know what? So in Strindberg's original, you have the Count, the boots. What I've done with this one, the boots here, it's really Lord Errol's boots. This guy has been giving Jean problems since 1888. And after the story, it's time to get rid of him. He's been giving Jean too much trouble since 1888. John is so scared of him until today, so we need to get rid of this guy. So that is one of the things. So who cares? Like, going back to your question, who cares who killed? The three audiences here. There is the Danish audience. The Danish audience comes with a preconceived idea. We know this play, then they might just miss the story. I have no other way of saying it. So, I mean, if they come with that, yeah, what can you show us about this play? We know it is ours, but you don't know Happy Valley. So this is what I want to tell you about Happy Valley, and I hope then they can go and research about it, read about it. It's gonna be fun for them to know about it. I think the same way it has been fun for me to know about Strindberg and to know about his works and and so forth. But then there is the audience also in Kenya. Now, Lord Errol is still a big name in Kenya. The story is known, of course, within different aspects, and so to them, bringing Strindberg is interesting because they don't know. I mean, it's not been performed so much there, but also to bring, because this is part of their history. It's part of Kenyan history, So for them, there's an intrigue. Back to your question: who cares who killed Lord Errol? The bottom line is, how do we tell a story of Happy Valley? How do we tell a story of Alice de Janze through the prism of August Strindberg's Miss Julie? Pretty much simple. That is what it is, to tell a story of Alice de Janze and Lord Errol through this prism, essentially. Now, why is Lord Errol's murder important? Why is his killing important? Well, today probably it's no big deal, but then again, because it raises very interesting questions. Remember, it's historic. The historic aspect here is that you have Kenya, and then you have our neighbors. You have Somalia and you have Ethiopia, right? During World War II, you have Somalia being under the Italians, Mussolini. Of course, you have Kenya, under the Brits. So one of the visions of Mussolini was to regain Ethiopia, and because he lost the Battle of Adowa between the Ethiopians in the 1880s. So during the fascist movement, make Italy great again, he promised them, we're going to regain Ethiopia. And he started moving his armies. Now you remember, these are their neighbors with the British colony. The settlers are very worried of what will happen to them. And they started arming them, and now Lord Errol becomes the assistant military secretary of this whole operation as well. And at the same time, you have Churchill on the other hand, who's trying to balance between having war with Germany and not. And one of the things of his way of appeasing the generals of Hitler at the time was, one of the ways to appease them was maybe to give them back the colonies. Now, Lord Errol is a known fascist. He's got links all the way to Tom Mosley with the black shirts in the UK. During the 20s, they were friends with him, and even as the fascist movement was rapidly growing on there. So Lord Errol apparently knows too much. He could cause trouble for Churchill's government in East Africa. And so this is some of the intrigues, because this is happening during World War II. So to get rid of this guy, it seems like a good solution for the government. But you know what? But he's too high profile. So that is why this news caught rampant during this period. So it's a historic period. It brings up also the aspects of the World War II. Much was not spoken about how it was being fought also in East Africa. So it brings those whole. So Lord Errol is not just Lord Errol. It's a historic period.
Playing a part on the chessboard.
Yes, exactly. I think that's which is interesting, because what happened is that a lot of Africans also fought in this war, and they were never given what they were promised to be given. And especially now, I don't know how many years it's been since World War II. 80 years, There's a growing groundswell of fascist ideologies coming back again, right? And are we repeating a cycle here? Are we at the beginning of that? So it's sort of to, bring this whole aspect. And yes, he was a renowned fascist. The whole idea is to bring up a historic, neglected. If I had a lot of money, I'll make a document. I'll make a movie about World War II in Africa. It's not known so much of what happened there. We just know the war happened over there. And some of those things are the things that it changed the geopolitics of the whole globe, really. So back to your question. No, it's a fantastic question, because then it makes me to at least say what the thoughts behind it. I hope people will just, after coming to see the play, and they enjoy it, then they go like, oh wow, we know so much about Karen Blixen, let's go and read some of his other stuff, you know. Some of those places, Les Jeans, it's now a school, very poor school, with 100 pupils or something. And
bearing her name?
Yeah, I mean, it's called Satima School. It was a house. Thinking along the lines is that how do we turn these stories for the better, you know, without being on everybody's face, you know, donate and all these sort of things. I mean, just make people to think along those lines. How do we turn colonial stories? Okay, they're bad. Okay, but how do we turn it for good? It would be very interesting, you know, to raise attention in the school, whether it's in Kenya, you know, like of how do we develop this, you know. It's controversial, yes, I know, like without being on people's faces and, you know, asking for their money. But how can we turn these stories into the good of the communities there? Same thing with Karen Blixen's legacy. You know, all these movies they make and all these sort of things. Would it be nice to sort of, you know, take that whole area where she lived and say, you know what, we have developed this creative product. Some of these profits are going to, you know, developing this area, you know, whether it's schools, whether it's building a library in the school, those sort of things, you know, like how do we turn artistic products beyond intellectual gratification? I would have loved to do this the same with this one. I'm in touch with the foundation. One of the books, actually, she's in Kenya, you know, she started this foundation called Happy Valley Heritage, and she's trying to restore all this sort of place. And I thought, oh my God, it'd be nice maybe, you know, because we're going to do this play in Kenya. We're doing it in Denmark, and then we'll do it in Finland and in Kenya. And we take it to Kenya, you know, when you invite all those people, you know, and they come in to enjoy themselves with champagne and all those sort of things, like to bring awareness. Like that is sort of the end goal, but I'm afraid of getting it out there because it looks, oh, okay, here's another thing, you know, here's another way of trying to get people to.
Yeah. I'd love to hear about your borderlessness. You're operating on a big scale, and I'd like to hear you about the effect of what you're doing, because you see it in a big perspective, and it's obvious that you're from another background, because you are able to do this kind of compare one thing to the other, which we cannot. So I think it's very, very interesting what kind of soup you're boiling, because we can get a lot from that. And I guess that's the reason why you are very successful making the embassies in the different kind of countries to support your work, because they can see that you actually can give something to them.
Wow. It's humbling, actually, that I could get funds to do this. For me, I don't take it lightly. And it's natural. It's not natural. I realize my background, I realize all sort of things. And for us to get funds to actually pursue this, from the Nordic Council of Ministers and the Swedish Embassy and the Norwegian Embassy in Copenhagen, it's an exciting journey in that sense, to be able to be given money and say, okay, you know what, do it. Do what you said you're going to do. So the stakes are a bit higher. So I'm happy about that. To bring in new perspectives. And that is back to your question in 2 years ago, that's New Nordic Voices. To bring new perspectives into old, if you can call it like that.
I was listening to the podcast this morning, and on the podcast you talk about your background in Kenya. Mm-hmm. And somehow it seems as if you are adopting the same kind of ideas here. Because you talked about your inspiration with the local theatre, which put up very, very large production of theatres. Mm. Once a month they had a new production, and they were introducing a lot of European playwrights, and they were doing a juxtaposition as well. And I guess what you're doing is alike.
Yeah, I was influenced so much by that. The dream in the very beginning was, when I first came to Denmark, was to study and go back and, you know, and do that. So yes, I've been influenced by that. I was exposed to that. I was exposed to the possibilities of... No playwright says this play has to be acted by this kind of people. Maybe they do that, I'm not so sure.
Normally they don't.
Normally they don't. They write a play. And I think it's us in our view of the world, we assume that this particular play should be acted by this kind of people. Play or a bad play, regardless, it could be acted by anybody. This is the way I view it, you know. Of course there are contexts and that sort of thing, but to give the artist or the actor the opportunity to explore different arrays of performance. So that has been always my background, and I stick with it because it's what I believe in. Even if people try to sort of move me to become what they think an African producer or should produce, I refuse to conform to just producing African plays. I will do them, and I've decided for colored girls. I don't want to be defined by either.
But what's typical about for colored girl is that it's actually about being human.
Yes.
It's not about color. Color is part of something, but it's more universal than that.
Yes, and those are the universal stories is what really attracts me. So yes, you're right. That is how I was influenced, and I'm introducing that, I think, in the Nordic countries, because if you take the mask off, is that there are not so many people of colors in the theatre. There are some people who are not being represented. Maybe we've overlooked it.
On YouTube, you have a small video from the workshop of Enemy of the People. I think you should hear just a little bit of that.
We have had 3 fantastic days here, working really deep into a classic play of Ibsen's, An Enemy of the People. And while we do that, it puts a lot of question to us, to our society today, and who have the right to be doing classics, who have the right to represent the Norwegian country and Denmark and Sweden, who can be the actor, who can have the voice on stage.
I think community theatre has all the ingredients needed to become a tool for change. So we hear that these 8 aspects are constantly influencing the design of cultural life in Norway, in Sweden, in Denmark. So if community theatre should be a game changer, or something that actually can form and process change, you have to understand that this is the framework that you're dealing with.
I'm thinking I always get inspired by nature and plants. Most of the time when I'm out of ideas, I'll go to the nature, because nature is so pure, it's so up-to-date to the weather, to us, and no matter how much we humans try to control nature, it will grow back though, right? I studied architecture before, and as an architect, you always have to control everything, you destroy, you build, you have to everything put together, but nature doesn't understand that. And have you guys seen a tomato plant pretend to be like a sunflower? No. Or chamomile, is my favorite flower, pretend to be a rose? No. They are as they are. And I think we humans, we always survive through community, to be together, to work together, to change. And without working together, without being together, it doesn't work.
I mean, it's a natural thing. We always take for granted who our neighbors are, regardless. I think that is part of the challenge. It's an identity challenge, at least in my world. It's always trying to find, where do I belong? Having lived in so many different cultures, having moved back and forth. I think in the very beginning of the conversation, we talked about how I admire people who have, born in one place, probably traveled here and there, but they have the social capital of a place. They know the place from back to back. I remember that feeling between the age of 1 to 20, being home in that sense. But
in Nairobi.
In Nairobi, exactly. But having moved back and forth in different places, and right now is when I'm beginning to really settle down. I've been saying that for so long. But then again, my point of saying is that, what is your cultural identity? Is it because you speak Danish? Is it because you're born in Denmark? Can you be both Danish, Kenyan? Can you be an amalgamation of so many different things.
Well, you are.
Yes, I'm beginning to realize that. It's a journey. It's something that I still have to tell myself on a daily basis, that I'm both. That is a challenge, both sides. So you end up being an island in a sense. It's a lonely journey. That's the only way I can put it. It's a very lonely journey.
But I guess all our journeys are more or less lonely. We have this picture about us being part of a group, but when it comes to about realizing what's inside us, we're all on solo journeys.
Yes, absolutely. And especially in this day and age where group identities is being shoved down our faces. As a person of color, I have to be able to stand firm in my ground and say, you know what, forget about this whole group identity thing. Even though, why do we attach ourselves? Why do we get our identities from a group at the expense of our individuality? I'm trying to constantly be aware that even though I carry the traits and I walk with and I've got the heritage, the ethnicity of this kind of group, my group does not define me. I'm defined by who I am as an individual.
But it's very simple. When we met last time around, it was in Ballerup shopping center.
Yeah.
And it wasn't difficult to find you.
That's also very true. That's every time I look at the mirror, I go, oh God, is that you really? Because I'm always surrounded by people who look very different from me. No, those are aspects you cannot escape with. But I'm talking about the aspects that lie within the mind and the heart, because those are the realities which you carry with you every single moment. I'm trying very hard to fight, to confront, personally. And maybe also I'll start putting it in my work, the group identity alibi. Because it's, you know what, it's, for me, I'll be honest with you, it's rubbish. It's completely rubbish. But you now, because you belong here and therefore these are, who are my people? Whole concept, my people. Who are my people? I'm struggling with it. That is, maybe I also carry the sentiments of a fairy tale still within me. Maybe I still carry those sentiments.
But I guess we all want to have this dream. It's a dream we live on. Because, and as an artist, we always work in order to step into those dreams. We're dream makers.
Yeah.
So I guess we are allowed to be a little bit sentimental when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it more true.
No. every society, there's. But from my standpoint, despite all the things that I fight for, quote unquote, fight for, representation and lots of things in Denmark, yada yada yada, I still find this it's a dream country. I still feel like, I told you, every time I come out of my house and I go, I'm still in awe. I still am. And I go, oh Michael, get over it, it's just Denmark, But to be here, it was my choice because I wanted to. I imagined it since I was very small. So I still carry all of that with me.
Is that because of Blixen?
No. Even though I lived at Ngong, I lived just close by there. You know what? I didn't know who Blixen was as I came to Denmark.
Weird.
Yeah. So it's very weird, isn't it? And even though I just lived close by there, actually. I think it's because of the Vikings. I think when I was small, I used to watch Viking movies, and it creates this. For me, it represented a country that is so far away.
But were you playing Viking?
No, I wasn't playing Viking. I just saw it on TV when I was very young. But for me, Denmark represented a country that is so far away, and I think I was just running away from, I don't know, myself really, as a young person. So I held into that ideal. But it's a hard question. How do I view Denmark? There's some things like any person, I can be critical about it, but I'm not vocally critical. I put all my critique in my theatre.
So we actually have to see Julie in the autumn.
Yes, it will play, I think we'll premiere on the 24th or 25th of August at Folke Theatre. Like I said, but we're having a workshop, which will be at Theatre Republic on the 15th of April. And the whole idea is to get all the people in one room and to sort of start discussing global migration and colonialism, different perspectives. Migration doesn't just happen one way. It doesn't happen Africans coming to Europe. It has happened the other way also, you know. If we look at on the bigger picture and the exchange of all those sort of things and reviewing all this, of course, with Miss Julie and examining Strindberg's Miss Julie within the colonial context of both colonial era and apartheid era. So I think it should be an interesting seminar.
Wow, it sounds wonderful. Congratulations.
Yeah, let's see how it works out.
I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to having you back on the festival this summer again.
Thank you.